Hello, ARPB. Thank you for inviting me. I am just honored to be a part of this discussion with our members. I certainly wanted to honor Miss Georgia. I know that our hearts continue to grieve as we cover her family and each other in prayer. She was certainly a dear mentor, mother, sister, auntie to me, and brought me into a closer relationship with ARPB and encouraged me to be a member of ARPB's Women's Council. And so she truly blessed and inspired me, as I know that she has truly impacted all of our lives. I am Treva Reid. I'm an Oakland City Council member, and I'm running to serve as mayor to move Oakland forward for all of us with a just and equitable recovery. We know that Oakland is on the wrong track, and my vision has been clear, my mission is resolute, and my purpose is unshakable to deliver for Oakland across the town with the change, accountability, and results we deserve, and as our Black community has too long demanded. I've been on City Council since last year, long enough to see what's not working for us, but it's short enough not to lose my hunger for change and see our city function with the basics and more for us to remain rooted and thrive here. And it's a change that demands this contagious hope and faith and action with courageous leadership, influencing decisions as your mayor to impact our lives, to deliver an equitable multi-billion-dollar budget, to execute timely delivery of critical city services, and to hire and lead an administrative staff that shows up for and with all of us. My experience boils down to two words: it's action and accountability. As a resilient single mother, I had my daughter at Hampton University. I raised her in Oakland, and I'm blessed that she was able to earn a full ride to Harvard University. I launched my own business, and I've run our family's small business that's still thriving nearly 2 decades later in insurance and real estate and mortgage and financing. And I've served in state government as a senior aide to Senator Nancy Skinner when she was in the state assembly and our state budget chair, helping her lead out on policies and delivering funding that benefited Oakland and Alameda County. I've led in Fortune 500 business for their great success. I've served deeply on over 12 community boards and organizations, including Satellite Affordable Housing Associates and community education partnerships, where we serve our houseless and highly mobile OUSD students and families, along with being a licensed minister at Shiloh Church, a state policy advisor for Black Women Organized for Political Action, and with my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. I leverage my lived, my legislative and professional experience to make a way out of no way and to ensure that everyone has what they need with equity and access to move forward. It's what I was raised to do. I'm one of the oldest born grandchildren of just my father's 10 siblings of 130 plus cousins. And we are all still alive. And so I grew up in a family of public servants and teachers and faith leaders and small business owners and laborers who valued deep, hard work. And it was my great-grandmother, Emma May Reid. She led the charge of our faith in action with social justice advocacy and activism from our home to the church, to the community, and as the voting poll precinct captain where we grew up. And so I've been doing the work that is before me for decades prior to serving on council. I lead with integrity. I lead with love from a deep well of having lived the issues and the challenges that we face today in our city. I've been fighting for those like my family who are enduring the deep trauma of losing loved ones to gun violence, as we lost our son Brandon in 2013. I fight for those like my family who's facing the threat of homelessness and housing instability, as I grew up living 20 to 30 deep in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and house hopping from one family member's home to the next. I fight for those who are seeking food security, those who are facing unemployment, those like me who have overcome domestic abuse and family members with mental health issues and business doors closing and working multiple jobs to provide for their household. It's what I was called to do, and it's what I've been doing. I put forth legislation that I'm sure we can talk about here, a resolution declaring gun violence a public health emergency in the city of Oakland. I've led out with a community safety task force day of action where we serve hundreds of neighbors with over 30 community-based organizations, city, county, faith, community partners, delivering resources and services along International Boulevard, giving them what they need where they are. I activated the Oakland Coliseum as one of 2 national COVID-19 mass vaccination sites, and then launched a District 7 COVID-19 task force to deliver more equitable citywide response and resources is out on the ground into the neighborhood where our community was not seeing that equity and access at the Coliseum, making sure that I secured $10,000 for free ride share codes and DoorDash gift cards and funding stipends to support our community and faith-based organizations. I've seeded significant funding from the Oakland Coliseum Joint Power Authority to establish hotel residency, and I'm on the Black Area Regional Black Housing Task Force called Black Hat to secure $500 million in state investment to address the significant displacement that we are experiencing in Oakland within our Black community. And I'm advancing over 800 affordable housing units in my district. There's a lot of work to be done. And as mayor, I am committed to get us back on track, reducing crime, housing our homeless, building affordable housing, creating good Oakland jobs so people can live and thrive where they work, protecting and equitably investing in Oakland small businesses, and loving on our town, keeping it clean and beautiful, and addressing the racial equity issues that are before us. Oakland has never had a Black woman mayor in its 170-year existence. I will bring a spirit of resilience, bridge building, tenacity, and fearless determination in leading us into our next strongest chapter. And so I know right now that I feel this urge and this momentum, many of you feel that it's time to shake things up and see that our next season of leadership will deliver results for us. Oaklanders deserve action. Hold me accountable, and let's get Oakland back on track together. I hope that you will all stay connected to me through our efforts out here on the ground, and join us at reidforoakland.com. That's REIDFOR Oakland.com.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Treva, for your time. There's a million places you can be, and you found the time to come here and join us and the ARPB Legislative Committee. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
There's definitely a few things we might end up diving deeper into. Some highlights you mentioned about your campaign, but we'll go through some questions that we've had for each mayoral candidate. And we'll just jump right into it and start here with our first question. And that question is, what is your position on TOPA, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, as it relates to tenants, homeowners, and the real estate industry professionals?
Yes, well, TOPA has not yet come before the City Council for us to consider adoption, as we weigh a number of paths aligned with our goal to prioritize, protect, and preserve housing and affordable housing. I have supported a balanced and equitable and sound approach to how we walk out those policies, and working with ARPB as policies come before us to have you at the table as I've reached out to engage our ARP leadership on other items. And so I believe that working together, we'll be able to address these housing priorities, the equity gaps, while ensuring that we identify and work to remedy unintended policy consequences. As a renter, I've supported ensuring tenants aren't put out and are not further displaced at the rate that we know Oaklanders have been displaced at 40%. I struggled this year with renewing my own lease when faced with nearly an 8% rent increase. Yet as a former housing provider for my first affordable home, I am sensitive to those unintended consequences of how we work to address these housing inequities and the issues that are most impactful to Black renters, Black homeowners, and property owners. And most of those that I hear from are women. They're women of color, and especially Black women in District 7 where I serve right now. And so we know that there are costs associated with adopting TOPA ordinances that are impactful to our legacy homeowners, along with just some administrative costs. And so we've got homes on the market that property owners are selling occupied to get out of the market. They're selling below listing price, and minority homeowners are feeling a great pinch with these unintended consequences on proposed measures to address these inequities and the increased costs. So we can look at ways to invest more into our Oakland land trusts. We can look at how we work and bring stakeholders together to address how we preserve housing. We know that it costs less to preserve than to build more, and the much needed deeply affordable housing. Serving on Saha, I know that it takes 9+ funding sources, and those units are about $1 million each. And so We've got to work more with our housing providers and especially small mom and pop property owners who are concerned with these policies, who are concerned with us making decisions that are impactful to them without them at the table and bringing them at the table. Our mom and pop property owners and many others, they've spent their life building towards home ownership. And while I'm not a homeowner right now, I thrive to come back into home ownership and being sensitive to how we support those who've been impacted. Those are some of the thoughts that I have. We need to make sure that we've got more subsidies for people to buy homes on the market. My first home that I bought, my first and only home that I bought was an affordable home ownership program. It was through a home ownership program. I had a city program that put me in touch with those in the real estate market who came in and did workshops and classes that taught me how to become a homeowner, how to maintain my home. I was able to benefit from city down payment assistance, no PMI, a 10-year tax abatement. And that's the type of work that I want to see advanced more with deeper investments into our home ownership programs here. We've got a relatively low home ownership rate. It's 41% in Oakland compared to the county at 53%. We know that our Black Oaklanders rent at about 65 to 68%, I believe, of that population. And so it makes our Black Oaklanders more vulnerable to rising rent, but it also creates opportunity for us to help our Black Oaklanders come into Black home ownership and helping to create programs that bring them on that path that I was able to experience, and the generational wealth equity that we want to see carry on in all of our communities of color, and especially for our Black Oaklanders who have had the most disproportionate impact in this housing crisis and experienced the greatest impact of homelessness with more than 60% of those who are unhoused coming within the Black community. And so we've got to be very intentional with the policies that come before us, and intentional to also protect those who are helping us to secure the affordable home ownership market, like our small mom and pop rental property owners.
That's a wonderful answer. And one of the things that you mentioned a couple times there at the end, and also as you were giving your thoughts on that, is these mom and pop owners. And for example, we've heard from a lot of our community members that, currently in Oakland, there's a lot of tenants who can pay their rents, but are not. And landlords are being forced to cover these expenses without any kind of recourse. And that could lead to things like late mortgage payments or potential, losing the home due to foreclosure because they just can't afford it. So I think a right, and we've discussed this before amongst our membership, but rights to a decent and affordable home and tenants' rights are necessary and an important facet of any economy. But I think the question that a lot of the members had is, how will you strike a balance between the tenants' rights and the homeowners, especially like those mom and pop owners who rely on maybe that rental income to sustain themselves through retirement?
Yeah, that's important. I worked to strike a balance. I'll give you an example. I worked to strike a balance on the progressive and equitable business tax. That was to create a more equitable and fair tax structural reform and raise resources that are desperately needed, certainly for the city. And while that process is long overdue, in the midst of that, I heard from very impacted groups of our neighbors, mom and pop, small property owners who had not felt heard in the process. They felt ignored. They had not had their thoughts fully considered. They had stated that the amendments on exemptions that had been made were not beneficial to them, and that they did not have that necessary and needed outreach and engagement required on those amendments. And I brought forth amendments to hear and reflect and champion some of the issues that they have brought forth. And so as mayor and as a leader, I've got to ensure that the processes that drive towards these policies and changes drive towards equity and should have opportunity for everyone to be heard and to be responded to, and to address the needs of our small rental property owners. We are making key decisions that should be ensuring that our minority community members who've been most impacted and our small property owners who are well represented as well within our BIPOC community, that we're fighting to keep their legacy alive and addressing the generational wealth gaps that we want to protect and create paths for, but those who already have that. And so I put forth some proposed amendments to create a new tax class for small rental property providers, and to find out what was required to define that classification, and what reduction on that tax burden could be considered for our small mom and pop owners. I put forth those amendments to reduce the tax rates for our small residential property owners, that did not call for them to be considered in a class of a commercial property owner, paying significantly higher when they're not gaining those type of revenues. And so I will continue to advocate for those who spoke out in that process, those who I may not be at the table with, engaging those voices citywide, getting out into the community, making sure that my staff gets out into the community, so that they are collaborating with us to address these concerns and to ensure that the measures that are led through my administration and those that may come from city council give them the ability to weigh in for us to see a balanced approach on those different measures. I tried to seek a balanced approach on the rent cap as well. And so I remain open to meeting with ARPB to address these threats, to address the issues that you're facing on the policies that are being proposed, to working with those community members who may not even be associated with ARPB, but you share that same level of intentionality around those issues. And as mayor, I'm going to remain open. I'm a member of ARPB. I'll continue to keep my membership in place with you. And that membership is just not on paper, but I believe that I have shown a track record of that sensitivity to wanting to hear from you, to understand how the decisions that we are making and my ability to influence and impact those decisions have your voice, have your input, and have your representation at the table. And for those who may not also be a part of this particular body, that they also feel heard. And so while council, it may certainly take 5 votes, and I didn't get the 5 votes on that substitute motion that I put forth, we'll continue to drive for that in the decisions that I'm able to lead over the administration that brings those items forward as well.
Thank you. And now we're gonna transition a little bit, stay on the housing topic, but more into first-time home buyers. And as you mentioned, you've gone through the process before, you've utilized some resources that have been out there. And one of the issues that we see coming up is in difference to improving minority home ownership, the average sewer lateral costs between $7,000 and $10,000. And the average sidewalk improvement can range anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. And having to pay for these additional costs knocks many of our future home buyers out of the market, especially our minority first-time home buyers. So are there any solutions or ideas that you have to assist these first-time home buyers in our market?
Well, the current sewer lateral program is absolutely a costly barrier for first-time home buyers, including the deposit required to defer payment and closing deadlines to come up with the money. We experienced this with my daughter, who could not assume some of those costs on her first home purchase, although outside of California, it was still impactful and speaks to this item. And I hope that she can return and buy here one day. So I'm willing to work with ARPB and other stakeholders to just address these challenges. I'm willing to hear from your ideas on how we can amend that process through East Bay MUD for just an improved sewer lateral program. Perhaps it's a first-time home buyer can get a signed contract instead of a $4,500 deposit as proof of just that scheduled inspection and repairs if needed. That deposit down payment to defer is really a barrier. When you're trying to get everything together as a first home buyer, perhaps getting a signed contract instead to show that, that you'll get an inspection and repairs if needed, or perhaps there are new regulations and rules for low income or first time affordable home buyer programs with payment options, or just a different process for those home buyers to navigate. There are cities that have their own sewer lateral inspection program. How do we come together and lobby together at the state and federal level for more just that equitable infrastructure funding improvements? There's a federal program called Justice 40 Initiative. How could that program and other programs outside of the city help to increase those opportunities for funding where we may not have that funding capability at the city level? The city could consider ways to fund a reimbursement program and work with stakeholders on what that criteria with the reimbursement cap limit on sewer lateral repairs look like. At the city level, we need to really further evaluate our programs to assess if they are fair, if they are reasonable, if they are feasible for home ownership, to be an available path to equity and uplifting our neighborhood and maintaining housing stability and bringing people into that path of generational wealth equity. Sidewalks, the city passed the point of sale sidewalk ordinance in 2020. It's expensive. Contractors charge exorbitant amounts. Homeowners have gotten, gouged with prices just not being stabilized. And so that has been challenging for us. The city has had a lengthy process that has been impactful in determining who owns the tree. We're going through it now with just even some churches. The property owner can't sell the house or the property until all the repairs are done. When the city is short-staffed, which we have been, that has certainly been impactful to how long it takes for us to be responsive, and that can impact the deal. And so as mayor, I've got to make sure that those positions are filled, that process is streamlined and expedited, that where we've been understaffed with, more than 100 vacancies, that we have people who are applying for certificates and they've been delayed for, over 100 days, 120 days. And so we need to respond and get staff in to address this backlog application. And if there are other paths that we can look at to address that application backlog, as mayor, I'm willing to work with you on how we can consider streamlined processes to avoid those delays and impacts to you and certainly to your clients. I believe that ordinance, people are trying their best to comply, and we've just not been responding. And so I want to understand more about those program impacts to you. We've got Measure U coming before voters on November 8th. It's a affordable housing and infrastructure bond. It also has some facility funding in there. And so if that measure is passed by the voters, there's an opportunity for funds to be set aside for proactive sidewalk repairs. We need a long-term sidewalk repair plan to really reduce our liability on claims. And every new construction has to have ADA compliance standards, and trip and fall claims are expensive to us at the city. We deal with those a lot in closed session, and sidewalk repairs can be addressed through perhaps this new funding path that's coming up. Perhaps we can tie sidewalks into a category within this bond measure that allows us to have that funding path to support those who need that assistance.
Yeah, I think, that's a really good point in terms of, especially as the elections are coming up, understanding what potential ballot measures, right, can help with a lot of these instances. So I really appreciate
it's 850 million. So we'll see if the voters pass that. We know that voters are also tax burdened. And but if it passed, I believe that that's an opportunity for us to work with you to see how we could create some funding mechanism in there.
Right. That's wonderful. On the same, I guess in the same, area of housing, something that impacts it greatly is crime. Right. And I think, one of the statistics that we've talked about so far is that violent crimes were up 8% from 2020 to 2021, with robberies being up 11% and burglaries being up 17% over that same period. How would you combat these rising numbers that impact the community?
Yeah, I mean, our community, we're traumatized by criminals preying on, killing, stealing, smash and grabs, petty crimes. My car is bipped right now. Our youth have been more engaged with just this unchecked lawlessness, and we've got to be able to hold them accountable for that harmful behavior. I mean, those who are committing that crime and are not willing to take the violence preventive measures, and for us to more deeply invest in the community that's experiencing these issues. And so that crime and violence, it's weighing on all of us. Our data will tell you that there are over 16,000 people who have experienced some measure of crime in the city. And so the trauma, the fear, and that frustration, it's real. And we've all had more than enough, as the two schools that have experienced even school shootings and a mass shooting are in the district that I serve now. And so these issues are personal for me, as I shared about our own son Brandon's life being lost, and just the weight of what we feel with nearly half of those homicides and shootings and violent crime taking place in the district that I serve. And so as mayor, I'm going to continue to prioritize and champion public safety as I've done day one in office. I'm going to make sure that we certainly budget for more academies, police academies, to increase and build a pipeline of Oakland grown policing, increasing that support staff, criminal investigation. We have 1,000 unsolved homicides right now, and families deserve justice and they deserve a response from our department. We want to see increased beat officers and foot patrol, and certainly burglary suppression units and burglary in business corridors and community safety ambassadors. We want to see ceasefire fully staffed as mayor to intervene and disrupt the rise in the shootings and violence throughout the day. We want to make sure our dispatching is fully staffed up with 911 operators. We had incidents when I came into office where we had 400 calls standing that no one could address and respond to those who were calling in. And the data had shared was shown at that time that those who were calling in the most and re-traumatized were Black women calling and no one being responsive to them. And so we've got to increase that responsiveness with our 911 dispatching. We've got to increase recruitment partnerships with OUSD and Merit, as we're doing. And Coach Margaret Dixon, who is my daughter's Oakland Powell coach, she's the officer over that program, is doing a great job of building more of that community trust, getting Oakland grown community members that reflect our diversity and our commitment to delivering trauma-informed community safety coming up through that pre-academy program. And we've seen with Chief Armstrong, the most diverse and inclusive classes in our academies. As we've just graduated 30, we've got another 25 that started and another class coming up in the months ahead. And we've got to make those decisions without delay. We've got to make sure that we invest more deeply into violence prevention, intervention, and healing and trauma care. I shared with you that I declared gun violence a public health crisis coming on, and that was supporting the historic investment that we made of $18 million into our Department of Violence Prevention. But it also called on the county to invest deeply with us and more equitably their $300 million American Rescue Protection Act funds, investing into the root causes of crime, investing in jobs, workforce readiness program, housing, mental health, healing, trauma care, life coaches, entrepreneurial program, and I would say junior entrepreneurial program for our youth, small business funding and programs, anti-displacement programs for housing and businesses, emergency relocation and victim surviving services, and working with us to rebuild trust at the county level as we have a new sheriff in town. It's expanding Macro citywide. Macro is our mobile assistance community responders of Oakland, where you can call in for service, and instead of an officer, our Macro team shows up to triage and navigate and to help get people connected with services and resources to address the issues that they may see out on the street that are not violent in nature. It's making sure that we, as Mayor, I mentioned doubling our violence prevention and intervention. We put 18 million in there, but we're still short half of what's needed for that department. But it's investing in citywide public safety surveillance camera, as I've helped to secure those cameras in our business corridors. It's bringing forth automated license plate reader technology, making sure that we honor our use policy. And it's doing that in partnership with Caltrans, with Union Pacific Rail, who we meet with BART on their easements, and CHP on the freeways. We all have a responsibility with how we engage. It's working with a strong DA partner to hold those committing crimes accountable. And it's establishing what I saw when my father was the chief of staff to Mayor Elihu Harris. It's establishing an interagency task force that collaborates and invests together in short and long-term strategies that deliver more on keeping us safe, protecting that peace. That's bringing OPD together with our Department of Violence Prevention, with our new Inspector General, with our DA's office, with the public defender, with our courts, with our sheriff's department, with Macro that is led out through our fire department. And it's also recruiting to fully staff our fire department and invested in upgrading our fire apparatus and equipment and facilities and new firehouses to improve their service and public safety response. And so those are some of the areas that I certainly have been committed to, that my track record has shown where I've delivered in that budget. I secured as a council member additional public safety measures, traffic calming measures, street lights, shot spotter technology when I came on did not exist past the 80s to the San Leandro border or above 580. I advocated for that technology. and other cost neutral budget amendments. And so I'll continue to fight for public safety as our mayor. I'll continue to make sure that we lead out prioritizing, keeping our community safe and protecting that peace, and showing up on the ground with opportunities like our Day of Action to make sure that people have what they need, and launching more deeply even our Oakland resilient families to eliminate the inequities that our community members are facing, not even having enough money to sustain themselves, to address just the poverty issues that we have in our community that have led people for generations to not feel supported and invested in, and having had to take actions that have certainly impacted us in areas of public safety.
I think, a lot of the things that I heard you mention, really do talk about the root cause of violence. And so you just mentioned something that I would love for you to elaborate on, if you don't mind. And that is, you mentioned, calling upon people for the Day of Action.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on what the Day of Action is and how that's community?
So I'm the kind of leader that shows up. I told you I served on 12 plus community boards before I came into office. And so I'm all about meeting people where they are. People are not going to City Hall. City Hall has been closed for 3 years. We've not been accessible. We've not engaged people. We got 700 plus vacancies of our own city workforce jobs that could help sustain families. And so I just believe that you got to get out and meet people where they are. And so we launched this Community Safety Task Force Day of Action in our district with community-based organizations and neighbors and city and county partners to really impact 8 of the most impactful blocks in Oakland that are in East Oakland, from 82nd to 90th along International Boulevard. We show up with resources like PPE, free haircuts, hot meals. I was able to get funding for Dixon's Fish and Chicken through At Thy Word Ministries, which is one of our ceasefire partners on the ground, to cook and prepare hot meals. And we go out and we feed everyone that we can find on those blocks. We provide toiletries, housing programs, community safety services, jobs. We've given out jobs. We need a neighborhood services jobs approach. They're not logging on to the city of Oakland. They're not logging on to the county. They're not logging on to some of these organizations. They don't even know that they exist. So we go out there and let the community know what jobs are available. We provide nutrition and wellness. We do workforce training, anti-displacement programs. We're out there talking about that. We're doing business merchant walks every month, talking to our businesses, asking them how they're doing, finding out the issues that they're faced with, giving them access to programs like Comcast's program, Kiva programs, federal, city programs. We're engaged with youth employment partners on the ground. We've got senior care partners out there. We've got mental health support providers out there and business services. We got real estate co-ownership model partners out there and community land trust partners out there. And we're also cleaning up in those blocks. We've got a community-based organization. It's called the ELF team, where this litter enforcement team, they're going out and they're prioritizing this area, but it's all hands on deck, on the ground, showing up for community, meeting them where they are with what they need. And in 1 month, we saw 5 of our unhoused neighbors return with keys. And one of them was my friend's father. And I can't tell you how much it moved me to see us being able to put keys into the hand of someone that I know personally through a close friend, and seeing the joy in his eyes. I did not know that us being out there would impact someone so personal for me that was looking for life stability and resources and help, and someone that my friend did not even know the condition of where her father was and how he was doing. And we were that touch point. And I was just grateful and moved to know that he was one of the ones that was able to come into a next level of not just housing stability, but a place that will connect him with ongoing supportive services and the resources that he needs. And that's what we need to do. It's not just about providing housing and certainly the hope that comes with housing, but it's that ongoing supportive care, that mental health care, that substance youth care, that helping you to get back on your feet care that I've seen in the village that supported me and raised me when my confidence crumbled and when I got knocked off my feet in many seasons of my life before the pandemic, when I didn't know that I was going to live and come through the seasons of abuse, the contracts on my life, through who I was dating. or just trying to struggle to take care of my daughter with multiple jobs and hold on to my welfare and WIC. And so I bring that level of love and lifting up our city's motto of love life to deliver and meet people where they are. And that's what our Day of Action is doing.
What a wonderful community event. I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we just had our last one October 8th. So I invite you all to our next one that's coming up, which might be partnered as a youth summit.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're definitely there to support that.
Thank you.
And one of the things you mentioned is second to last question that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you can't talk about housing, I think, without talking about homelessness. And in Oakland, the population of homelessness has grown 24% over the past 3 years. And although the number of unsheltered residents has only increased about 100 people, it's still a statistic that continues to increase. So what would you do to decrease the overall homeless number that we face in the city of Oakland?
Yeah, well, let me first say I'm shocked. When I came into council, I did not know that we did not have a robust funded plan that was staffed to meet our affordable housing goal. We've only met 26% of our affordable housing goal. And so we know that we've got to have a plan that's funded, that's staffed, that's resourced, that really focuses on producing new homes, preserving affordable homes, and protecting tenants from just the rent increases and the evictions that have been before them. We need to build over 13,000 affordable housing units and over 4,000 moderate income units in this next housing cycle. And so I've fortunately served on the board for satellite affordable housing. I've worked to secure funding to build quality affordable housing, to increase senior programs and services, and to make sure that we had what people needed in rapid rehousing for many populations. I shared that my own experience in childhood, and as an adult, I've endured housing instability. I've relied on government assistance programs, and the systemic disinvestment of affordable housing vouchers has really been egregious. It does not uplift our value for housing as a human right with our federal partners coming to the table. So we got to identify and convert existing units into deeply affordable housing. That's the opportunity that we've got. We've got to take a look at what we've got and how it can be used to meet the needs that we have with temporary and permanent housing solutions. We've got to audit existing revenue streams that were designed to alleviate homelessness. Taxpayers have invested in Measure Q and Measure W and Measure KK, and we've got to make sure that we're spending that funding as intended, and having people at the table to make sure that we're held accountable and that we're communicating out how we're spending the money that's been set aside to address homelessness. We've got to prioritize, like I said, utilizing our public city-owned land that supports this development, transitional age youth housing, veteran housing, senior housing, are all efforts that we've been working at more since I've come on, and making sure that those properties exist in transit corridors. We've got Coliseum Connections and Coliseum Place that have come up along that transit corridor, and we need more cap and trade dollars that I helped to secure when I worked for for Assemblymember Nancy Skinner when she was in office at that time in the State Assembly. We've got to improve and expedite and streamline the city's permit process with how we expedite and pull forward those affordable housing projects, those workforce projects, including modular and accessory dwelling units, to really build up the housing stock. We've got to invest in anti-displacement services to combat the gentrification that has led Oaklanders and legacy Oaklanders from being pushed out. And so we've got to make sure that the policies that we have in place with criteria for opportunity zone development, we've got our housing element in the general plan that's before us, which is just a critical time. We haven't had this in 20 years where we could really shape our land use policies to benefit us right now with how we're going to move forward. We've got to restructure our funding. How are we going to invest into these temporary and permanent housing solutions? Well, the city auditor just told us that we've spent $70 million and we've really mismanaged it. We've got to take a look at how we're structuring our funding to invest more in not managing this crisis, but bringing people into housing solutions. And that's what I would like to do. We've got to increase our rental assistance funding. Rounds 1 and 2, we've put a lot of money into that, but we've got $3.5 million left, and we still got 2,500 people waiting to have their rental assistance funding applications processed. We're processing about 400,000 a week. That's about 40 applications. And the average application is around 10,000 per application. Well, that is helpful. And as mayor, I want to see us double that amount. We've got to increase funding into down payment assistance programs for homeowners to have that funding, to keep seniors in housing, to get legacy home owners stable in their homes with mortgage assistance programs. We've got some first-time home buyer education workshops that I think that we need to be doing more of, but those programs need to be supported. MAP needs to be supported. Cal Home needs to be supported. We had the Oaktown Roots program. I had one home come up into my part of the city in District 7 with that. And so we've got to work with ARPB on those initiatives. We got to get more state and federal funding into those programs, like the Town Connect program as well. We got to explore recommendations that have been made to reduce our city transfer tax for first-time buyers. And so we've got to also leverage the enhanced infrastructure finance district opportunity that can also help fund our housing development. We should be getting a report back in the next month from our city staff with what they're going to show us and how they've been exploring how we can leverage an EIFD. There's some legislation that's out. AB 2011 with WICS. There's a number of different legislations out, but this is one that I've just been thinking of more as we've got a number of faith partners and partners who want to see housing come up in commercial corridors. And Assemblymember Wick's bill, it's affordable housing bill that allows you to streamline the approval process for 100% affordable housing projects in commercial zones for mixed income housing projects. We want to see more workforce housing projects. There's a project, Oak Knoll, in my district, where the 5 acres of that land that the city does own, that those 5 acres will be 93 workforce housing properties for people to buy into and for them to have. I'm hoping that they're affordable home ownership programs. That's my goal. But 93 affordable townhomes that we're working to build up. And so we've got to collaborate on just these public and private partnerships. We've got to collaborate more at the county level, the state level, the federal level. I'm fortunate that I am the only candidate in this race that I've worked to build strong statewide partnerships and collaborations when I worked for Nancy Skinner, and having built on those opportunities. And one of those opportunities is there's some state funding that we were able to build some units out here on International from the Better Neighborhoods, Same Neighborhoods program to really build this deeply affordable housing and health model. We've got these affordable housing units that are coming up in partnership with Axville Gospel and La Clinica Health. And I think that's a great model for us to build on. And I would ask you to join with me with this Regional Black Housing Task Force to secure the $500 million that we're asking to be given into the Bay Area region. Many of the cities around us have significant displacement of our Black community members, and we're looking for more targeted and intentional investment, more race-conscious investment to tackle the issues. We are also expanding our Teachers Rooted in Oakland. It's called TRIO. It's a housing workforce model. We just got $5 million from the state to ensure that our teachers can stay rooted here and have a stipend to support them. And we've got to engage more deeply with OUSD as they're going through a strategic master plan to invest in our housing goals with their vacant properties. And then this one I think is certainly important for this group is to support mom and pop small rental property owners. It's to help them help us in providing affordable homes and ensuring that we build up the support that they need as they accept the housing vouchers for our low income residents. And so those are some of the ways that I would approach how we address the housing crisis and the opportunities before us to bring our unhoused into housing stability and compassionately enforcing our encampment management policy that has not been enforced or invested in fully with adequate staff in this last year. So we got 851 encampments. We've got a staff of 4, and we've got to be intentional and urgent about how we fund and build up the staff and the support within the other departments around this particular department to make sure that we show up and help bring our housing community, our unhoused community off the streets, and that we're also working to employ those who are living in encampments while we work to bring them into housing stability.
What's so nice to hear is just the way that you answer these questions, the opportunities that you can see that are out there, right, to solve some of these problems. So I
They're out there.
Must say I really appreciate, like, as deep as you're diving into each one of these problems that we bring up and all the potential solutions that we can have. And, you know, the idea of all coming together to strike that balance.
Let me just share this, Joe, because the governor committed $5 billion to housing and homelessness programs. And so while we've been able to tap into some state funding, we've got to also address just some bureaucratic barriers that we've experienced with creating RFPs on top of RFPs that's pushed us to the end of the pipeline of some of the home key funding that we've missed out on. But they've got $500 million for state low-income housing tax credit programs. They've got $425 million for infill infrastructure grant programs to accelerate development for qualified infill projects in brownfield and more downtown urban oriented areas. They got $410 million for adaptive reuse, like converting commercial buildings into affordable housing. They got $325 million for over 2 years for this multifamily housing program. We want to see more multifamily units developed over single family units, and that has financing for construction and acquisition and rehabilitation, conversion funding built into that. $250 million on top of all of that for the Housing Accelerator Program, funds that could be used to address the backlog of shovel-ready projects like we've got one at Clare and Eads, where we're looking to build a modular senior homes catacorner to the East Oakland Senior Center. And then there's $150 million for preservation of existing affordable housing and 150 for home key to fund more hotel and motel conversions. We've got the Radisson Inn on Hagenberger that's open with 200 and something units that I've been working and trying to get the administration support as we need funding to take over this hotel that was once funded by the county and is no longer funded by the county, as we're talking about bringing, you know, community members from West Oakland and East Oakland into housing. And so those are some of the other things that I think that together we can all advocate more collectively on, certainly with me as mayor, with our council, and just with key stakeholders like you at the table to get more for Oakland.
Well, and I think the last question I have, and then I'll pass it off. I think, really to kind of wrap all of this up is, you know, everyone loves a beautiful, clean, safe place to live. And you did mention it in the answer of one of your questions, but what steps do you plan to take to create and sustain a beautiful, clean, and green litter-free Oakland?
Oh, that has been one of the issues. Well, I'll tell you that most of my community members that I am surrounded by, they want us to see a declaration of illegal dumping crisis in our city, because the level of the condition of cleanliness is it's really been impactful. It's really been tragic to see that we've not invested enough into keeping our city clean and beautiful. So coming on to council, while I've shared with you the magnitude of crime in this part of the community, what my neighbors wanted more was to see on the ground designated, you know, proactive response to illegal dumping and blight. And one of the first things that I did in my budget proposal, and before that budget proposal, was I went to the mayor and asked for that level of support. And we didn't get that designated, you know, dedicated crew response, because we were sharing, you know, a truck with our neighboring district, which is as impactful. And so as mayor, I want to make sure that we've got designated resources in the most impactful areas of our community to address the illegal dumping and blight before us. But we also need to work on making sure that we've got enough staff in place. I came on to council and we put environmental enforcement officers. We brought 2 additional environmental enforcement officers on. I think we have 2 more coming. Those individuals are on the ground doing the work to educate, to cite, to outreach, to engage. They can track from their mobile device what's going on. They can look and pull up where dumping may have originated from, but they can also be responsive to making sure that we are cleaning up in that area. One of the other things that I worked to do was I advocated for more resources. Communities like East Oakland, but across the city, are under-resourced. We have probably, I'd say 40%, 50% of the tonnage that's collected comes out of East Oakland, and yet we only had 12% of our waste receptacles. That doesn't add up to equitable resources for a community that's this impacted. And so we made sure that we addressed that. but we found out that there's some contract terms with Waste Management that won't allow us to put more than 10 new waste cans into our entire citywide system. And so we've got to work to address a number of the challenges that we've got with our waste management contract. One, we haven't seen the benefit of a significant number of jobs that are supposed to be Oakland-based jobs. Two, we are paying over $12 million, I understand, in cleanup services that should be part of a franchise agreement, like with Waste Management. And three, we've got carts that a system where people will buy or sign up for the level of cart that they can afford based on and not the level of cart that they need. And so we've got to make sure that that contract actually allows people to have the right size cart for the right size need of what their family needs to maintain that. We've also got to hold our commercial businesses accountable. People are not signing up for businesses. And so we're doing some things internally to make sure that we track and remedy that. But we also need to make sure that we've got greater enforcement. I have led out with helping to secure illegal dumping cameras citywide. And where we fell short of being able to really address the need for that type of surveillance in East Oakland, I sought support from the DA's office. So DA O'Malley has worked with our office. We brought OPD in and Public Works in for us to come up with a memorandum of understanding to secure a grant from the county that's through their environmental consumer protection area to give us more of that surveillance in business corridors to help address that. But we've got to do a lot more to certainly take care of this issue that has not been managed well. I'd love to see what I call a Love on Our Town tour in the first 100 days, going out to every neighborhood, making sure that we focus on those issues like illegal dumping that are most impactful with town halls and street cleanups. We've held over 30 plus cleanup events that we've participated in. We've hosted, I believe, over 8 of our own. We've had hundreds of volunteers out over the month, and we're working to do more of that. But the city has to show up. We've got to staff Public Works, which is 126 staff members short. We've got to introduce those job opportunities out into the community. East Oakland and West Oakland and many flatland neighbors are in some of the most impacted zip codes of unemployment that we're tracking. And we've got to get out and do more job fairs and partnerships with community-based organizations and faith-based organizations to hire from our community into these jobs that don't require a high level of skill or degree for them to join us in helping to beautify and keep our city clean and beautiful. We have some initiatives with Caltrans and through the Beautification Council, where we're hiring our unhoused community members. We've got the ELF program where we're hiring those from our community and those who are returning citizens to get them opportunities to have that income stability. And I believe that we can do a lot more with a new education outreach and engagement program that's in all the languages to engage, the diverse community that we have to take part in keeping our city clean and beautiful and loving on our town with proactive crew response to those hotspots. So those are some of the ideas that I have that I believe that we can build on.
But as I mentioned before, the thoughtfulness in your responses and all these ideas are wonderful to hear. We're not quite done yet. We did get through the questions, the questions that we had, the preset questions, but Maureen has we probably only have time for maybe 2 questions, Maureen.
Okay.
I will turn it over to Maureen to just ask a couple questions that we still have from the queue from some of our members.
Okay.
Nice seeing you again, Treva.
I love your name.
That's right.
It's my mother's name.
You texted me. You have to resend it.
I do. The meaning of your name is beautiful. I'll have to pull it up for you again.
You have to. My phone went in the Petaluma River, but so do that again for me. But okay. I also had 2 that we asked, and I'm going to say them in a row. But two you answered, and 2 you don't. One, I'd asked you before, and you can leave a link. There's a lot. You have a lot of groups you belong to, but there's a lot that we wanted to find out. And if you could list those groups that the city's helping, that you're helping, where people could join and we could tell people, that'd be great. So you had a link or something you were going to send me, and you probably did. So if you could do that, it would be wonderful. Now, the 2 questions we had that were really specific were on maps because there was $600,000 we found out from Nikki Duesberg that maybe it's gone. We don't know if it was spent, but the staffing was gone. And so you addressed that we heard from Nikki that there was probably no one hired until the day the person that retired left. And we understand you want to staff, but if there's some way anybody could help you or how to get people staffed before that person retires, that might help. But we would love it if you could help us find out where the $600 went, if it went back to the general fund. That was in the MAPS plan. So if you have any ideas there, that would be great to hear.
I would need to look into that. Yes, let me follow back up with that one.
Okay, that would be great. And you mentioned, so the links to the groups, we'd like to know some of those. Like the affordable housing would be of great interest to us. Now, I know like the old Sears building, but if they mentioned the buildings and we could publish it somewhere, that would be wonderful. If there's a link to those kinds of affordable housing projects and where the money comes from. The other thing that we found out, the money for the MAPS type of thing from the Biden infrastructure plan.
Are you talking about the mortgage assistance program funding?
There's, yeah, the mortgage assistance program.
Okay.
Yeah, the sidewalk repair, Eric and I did a lot of work on the sewer lateral, the sidewalk repair. And one of the things I found out is it's not just contractors charge. My husband's a contractor. There's labor costs, there's shortage costs. Those used to be in the cities. There's still quite a few cities where Public Works does it. Maybe there's a program where people could work in the city, or the city could do some of that, or a zero grant program. So if there's any programs like that for buyers, you know, it's a seller's market, but it could turn, it's turning a little bit for those sidewalk repairs or an inspection, like even every 5 or 10 years, the homeowner does, so it doesn't sit for 20 years and not be looked at because they didn't know they had to do it for point of sale. We'd be interested in that kind of thing. If there's any, if those are kinds of solutions we'd be interested in. If you have any other solutions, you mentioned a few to the sidewalk repair or the sewer lateral.
Yeah, I'm happy to send you any resources and data that I have. I will look into the MAP question. If you could put it in the chat so that I can make sure that I'm following up specifically with what's needed on that program and any of the other ones. I don't know if you need information on Cal Home or Oakland Roots affordable housing, or if it's just MAP that you have interest in.
The MAP money, there was literally 600,000 there.
That money was exhausted. I understand that all the money in MAP was gone. I mean, it was up to 75,000 to purchase a home. But from my understanding before Director Olatoye left, that there was no more funding in MAP. But if you've heard differently, I'm happy to follow up with our new interim director, Christine Munn, to find out what funding is available. I mentioned how much funding I understood was available in a rental assistance program, but for our home buyer mortgage assistance program, that money was gone. And then the Oakland Roots affordable housing, there was only one family that I'm aware of that secured that housing. That project consisted of 24 new construction single family homes in various sites throughout Oakland, 3-4 bedroom homes. Those were like moderate income homes up to 120% AMI. I will look to see how many total of those homes that we had also and what type of funding may have gone into those homes and if there's still funding available. I understood that they were currently accepting applications for that one, but for MAP, the funding had been exhausted.
That would be very helpful to us to get where the affordable housing is. There's quite a few others. Last time you go ahead, but there's one that was asked of Sheng Tao about school closures. There was one, people think that they didn't have a reason or why. And so we wondered, what was the reasoning and how did they do it? Do you know anything about that so that people can have input and maybe we can open the schools? I think it's sad that they were closed, or make those schools into teacher housing. I mean, what was the process of closing the schools?
Well, I think there was no process, and that was a part of the challenge, that there was no engagement with the communities that would be most impacted, particularly the school communities or the parent communities within those areas. 5 of the 11 schools that were on that initial closure list were in my district. There was a lack of equity analysis that was done in these communities that are certainly more Black and Brown community members who the school had just come out of a big COVID impact with 900 plus within the school district impacted by COVID, and families who are essential workers really working to regain their footing and get back on their foot. And this part of the district where we had 5 schools scheduled for closure, it's the part of the city and the part of the entire county that had the highest death diagnosis and hospitalization rate. It's the district that is the highest percent now of Latino, 51% Latino, nearly 40% Black, and a community that's been struggling and that we've disinvested in. And now we're talking about pulling the rug from up under them with the one place that they thought would be a safe place for their children to have some level of stability being decided on without them at the table, and without a race and equity analysis to understand the strategy of what they were looking to bring forth with a number of the issues that the school communities have. And so I did not support that decision or the rollout, and we're working to keep the school community at the table. I chair education partnership, and so I continue to work to try to make sure that the issues that we are bringing to the table, that we're working to deliver just equitable paths to academic enrichment, resources to help families and schools overcome these equity gaps that our children and our families are facing. We've tried to put more money into Head Start to invest in that stability at an early age, making sure that our children have access to technology tools, that they've got stable housing, nutritious food. When I was living from one house to the next, I felt that lack of stability, that stress, and that anxiety of not knowing where I might go to school because of the housing instability. And so these children are facing a lot, their parents are facing a lot, and they want their voices heard. I put forth and co-authored a ballot measure, Measure S, that's on the November 8th ballot, that would also give our non-citizen parents, legal guardians, and caretakers a voice in deciding on their school board trustees, to give them that voice of empowerment with the decisions that are being made that are impactful, as 13,000 students and parents are representative of that non-citizen body within OUSD. And so they've got to do better. We've got an opportunity to have new, certainly school leadership, and revisit how we're going to reimagine public school and what that looks like with smaller school classes, but also the support and the resources that are needed to sustain our schools in the community, and not see schools in great parts of the community really impacted. Like Grass Valley is one of those in my district. That's a school that you want more kids to go to. It's like an oasis up there for learning and for peace and just processing. And we've got to make sure that we also fund teacher housing, teacher stipend, mentor programs as a Black Educator Certificate program. And we've got to see how Oakland Promise is going to really deliver on that promise to more deeply invest from cradle to career. There's a lot of money in that scholarship and funding path. And we need to make sure that our children are actually getting the quality education and meeting the early literacy and proficiency levels to be able to maximize that funding path, because they actually matriculate from middle school into high school, and from high school, they're able to graduate. Our children are not meeting A through G eligibility. Our Black and Brown students are proficiency levels at less than 30%. And so we are really not taking good care of our children. We're really failing them with the path that we provided. And so that school closure issue brought up a number of issues that we really need to look at with how we're going to come back to the table to support our children with educational opportunities, access, equity, and the resources that they need, and those of the school community that's supporting them. It's a crisis. It's a crisis.
That's a big word.
And as mayor, it's my opportunity to support, it's my opportunity to help leverage the influence that I bring as a mayor, and even funding paths and opportunities, and even advocating up to the state level to eliminate some of the debt that is really impactful to OUSD.
Yeah, I think that was great. I think we're going to send you some questions.
Okay.
We could get some more, because I know there were some other questions, and I'd love to, but I think we sort of run out of time. And
okay,
I write some questions to you that you could answer.
If you
You
could
know,
send me any question, I will make sure I followed up so I don't try to recall them by memory here.
Well, Treva, you have, again, I say, you are a dynamo. I mean, your knowledge, your energy, I think you outdid yourself even over the last time. So,
Wow, thank you. That's the grace of God.
yes, you did. I think you did outstanding. And
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate your, I mean, we can't, we have rules about saying who we endorse, but let's just say a lot of us are excited about you.
Well,
So
I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here to support you. I care and I love people, and I'm here really to take care of people. It's what I was called to do. And I want to see our lives transformed, our community and our city transformed. And this opportunity is to come into a role of influence to really impact it. I came in and I saw a lot of politicking. I saw a lot of politicking. I saw a lot of deals getting cut and deals being made that was a disservice to our entire community. And it unsettled me and it unnerved me. And it led me to this moment of why not now and why not you? We deserve better.
Absolutely. I mean, your fervor and your integrity, that's what really comes through. And you hear a lot of bad stories about these deals that are behind and you can tell from your story, just, what touches me, my wife and I, we lost a child in 2013, but I always say that changes you, that changes who you are. So, and how you look at things, you don't tolerate things that you used to tolerate the same way. So,
we shouldn't have to tolerate it. It's,
absolutely.
I feel like it's been like the Hunger Games, trying to get 5 votes to drive for equity and like what people need. Like I'm fighting for the community that's been left out, that's been shut out, that's been put out, that's not felt like they've had a voice at the table. Or you know what? They work in 3 to 4 jobs. They ain't got time to get to the table. Or they're just disillusioned and mad because when they were at the table, we didn't show up for them. Just like with the Emerald New Deal, when we tried to put forth a measure to take the cannabis dollars and redirect them and reinvest them back into the communities like East and West Oakland that have been most impactful by the war on drugs, and give jobs and food security and educational programs and mentorship and internships for our children and our family that we decimated with systemic programs. We did that in these communities. And we couldn't get 5 votes to put that money where it should be best spent, with transparency and just line items. Like, it shouldn't be all in this big general fund pot and people don't really see where that money is actually going to really show up for our community. And so I'm committed to doing that regardless of where God calls me to serve. If he allows me to win as mayor, you better believe this fight of faith is going to be put in action like I've never known it, and we will see change. If I'm led to remain in this seat, I'm going to serve with that same fight of faith and do what I was called to do with excellence. And I appreciate you being a partnership and partners at the table.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Joe, thank you. Maureen,
thank
Madam
you.
President.